잠시 후 제11회 북극 항로 국제 세미나
We're going to get started with the third session of the International Arctic Shipping Seminar of this year, and I'd like to ask the participants to be seated. Thank you.
시작하겠습니다.
We will now get started with the third session of the 11th International Arctic Shipping Seminar, and the session is on the international joint research, and we have 3 presentations. And I'm going to invite the moderator of this session, Professor Park Ho-chul from Korea Maritime and Oceans University. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Good afternoon. I'll be moderating the third session, and my name is Park Ho-chul. And we've seen many things happening in and around the country, and this year is about to wrap up. And I hope the darkness is scattered away and the brightness comes in. And this seminar last year was held online because of the pandemic, and this year, although partially online, we are sitting in this conference room and holding this event offline in person. And this session is about joint research on the Arctic shipping routes and the economic aspects of the Arctic shipping will be the focus of this session. And we have 3 presenters for the session. And I'd like to invite Professor G.I. Wei on the economic feasibility of operating the Arctic ship route. And the second presenter is Professor Hae-young Jia from Shipping and Logistics of NHH of Norway on container shipping, capex, and fuel consumption concerning NSR. And last but not least, we're going to have Professor Hong Sung-won presenting us on Korea's response to Russia's northern transit corridor and container ship operations. And after the presentations, we're going to have Mr. Park Tae-seok and another team leader for the panel discussion. Without further ado, we're going to begin the presentations.
지아웨이 교수님께 발표를 부탁드리겠습니다.
Professor J.Y. Wei, I'd like to ask you to deliver your presentation. Now the floor is yours, and as already introduced, the topic of your presentation is the economic feasibility of operating the Arctic shipping routes. So I think the screen now shows the name of Professor Jang Wan, but unfortunately, now we have different speakers. So to that end, I'd like to ask for your understanding to the participants. So again, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Professor Park.
예, 발표를 계속 하시면 될 것 같습니다.
Yes, please continue. We are ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. 안녕하세요. I'm Zhao Weige from Shanghai Maritime University. On behalf of Professor Zheng Wan, I'm here to present our work on economic analysis of container shipping on the North Sea route. And instead of make it a pure academic report, we want it to think from the perspective of shipping companies. And the next slide, please. I will give a brief introduction and about the background and the current status of the container shipping practice on the NSR, and based on the sailing feasibility under the NSTC project, we made an economic evaluation in comparison with the traditional route through the Suez Canal route. And finally, I will draw some conclusions. Next, please. And as we all know, over the past decades, the traffic volumes on the North Sea route have grown rapidly, and it reached nearly 33 million tons per year last year. But the Russian government is more ambiguous. It sets a goal to be 80 million per ton per year 2 years later to reach this goal. So in order to make it into reality, they made so many projects. One of the most important is the Northern Sea Transit Corridor projects, and it strengthens this route from the hardware to software, from the construction of the icebreakers to the information platform. But one thing we need to bear in mind is that they want to build 2 transit hubs, as this picture in the left show. One in Murmansk for the European side, and one in the Petropavlovsk on the Kamchatka island, and for the far east side. And between these 2 ports, they want to offer a shuttle services for the container shipping. So it leaves 2 options for shipping companies. One is let Russia to control the North Sea route and then make the shuttle services by themselves. And they just provide feeder service at the European side and at the far east side. And another option is to take part in the container transit on the North Sea route from Asia to Europe. And next slide, please. Okay, before we come to our economic evaluation, I want to introduce some current status about container activities through the NSR. As we can see from the table, last decades, we can rarely find container shipping, container transit on the NSR. Just 2 transits in 2011 and controlled by the Russian company based in Murmansk from Dudinka, a rubber port on the half of the North Sea route to China. And Musk takes this pilot voyage in 2018 from Busan to Bremerhaven in Germany. And in these years, it is controlled by the Atomflot, an affiliate company of Rosatom, by Sam Morput. And from Murmansk to St. Petersburg or to Petropavlovsk. And next, please. Okay, for the current regular container shipping on the NSR, there is only one vessel named Sevenport. It's a nuclear cargo ship, and with a very old age. It was first delivered in 1988 and nearly 34 years old, and it converted to Atomflot since 2008, and it provides regular services every year. The vessel is with a capacity with 1,300 TEU, not a very big one, but it is the fastest as recorded on the NSR route. Let's see the picture, the table on the below. We can see that most of the time, especially in winter, she always stay at the port of Murmansk and start from the middle of June. And she began her voyage from Murmansk to St. Petersburg, nearly 1 week, and back to Murmansk in 1 week, and take only half a month from Murmansk to Petropavlovsk, that is to transit the NSR route. So it is the fastest one recorded on the NSR for the current regular shipping. Next. And next, please. And so, based on those things, there are different attitudes from different shipping companies. One is very negative, especially for MSC, CMA, CGM, and they think it is not a commercial alternative route due to so many uncertainties. The weather, the extreme weather, the oil pollution, the noise pollution, and for the Arctic region, so many concerns. And the same as conclusion can be made by some Japanese and Korean companies as we investigated. And another attitude is from Musk. It used to be nature neutral, but after it sent a container ship in 2018, and it thinks it's not profitable to sailing the NSR route. So it's a one-off trip. After that, Musk joined the former attitude. But some companies still think it is profitable and very optimistic on the NSR route, especially for the Chinese state-owned companies, COSCO Shipping. And it thinks it's a strategic channel and make it economically viable. first voyage is made in the 2013 and sent the vessel named Yongshen to cross the NSR and make some profits. And after 2 years later, she made a round trip, and year by year, more and more vessels joined in the team on the NSR. And in 2021, last year, the voyage reached 14. However, most of the vessels are general cargo or heavy lift vessels, not for container ones. The container are only loaded on the general cargo, several containers. Next, please. So, the feasibility of the regular NSR container shipping, we divide into 3 parts according to the NSTC project. First, for the icebreaker support, as introduced by the former speaker, and most of the, we can see the 2 pictures are below. Most of the icebreakers were deployed in the Caribbean Sea and in the winter period. And for the summer period, some nuclear icebreakers were sent to serve the transit routes on the NSR. But to strengthen their icebreaker fleet, and the Russian has a project 2220, and with the icebreakers with 34 meters wide, which can serve nearly a 5,000 TEU container ship. And for a future, they have project 10501 for a bigger icebreaker. We call it Leader, and it will be delivered as planned, if all goes well, in 2027, 5 years later. The beam of the Leader is about 47 meters, which can serve a more than 10,000 TEU container ship. Okay, that's the icebreaker fleet. Next. And as per the port infrastructure, they have completed the reconstruction of the Port Pavik, Port Sabita, and on the North Sea route. But most of the infrastructure now is for the energy and the national defense, really for the container transit. As per the 2 transit hubs, Port of Murmansk, we can see on the picture that at the left side, there is a transshipment terminal on the east berth and north berth for Murmansk. So, but the ship it can hold is only 3,000 TEU. We often make a call to a shipping agency in Russia, and she thinks it is not ready for bigger container ships in Murmansk. It's a nightmare for them. And for the port of Petropavlovsk, Kamchatsky Island, and it's on the transshipment complex it can hold. However, there are 5 months with the ice cover. We need the icebreaker support for a commercial usage. And the next page, please. And with regard to the container fleet, we say it's only on a paperwork. Prepare a preliminary feasible study, national support plan, and annual monitor. They all have been commenced, but however, as far as we know, there are no contract, no orders for the new building plan for container ships. Because according to Rosatom, they will send a pilot ship in 2 years later for a 6,000 TEU vessel. However, until now, there is no evidence to show that there is a new building plan. Next, please. And also for the ice condition, NSR is impossible from the perspective of shipping companies to open for navigation throughout the year. And although the ice extent is shrinking year by year, the open days of NSR, the longest days recorded is 153 days, nearly 5 months. So for the shipping companies, a seasonal container shipping is more available. Next, please. So based on, as my aforementioned, these background and current status, we conduct an economic evaluation with a traditional mode, a classical mode, cost-benefit analysis with the scenarios as following. And we choose a route between Far East and Europe, let's say Shanghai and Rotterdam. And a post-Panama container ship can be deployed as the biggest one on the route now. And it's a Polar Class 7 standard. And we also choose a 5-month navigation window from July the 1st to November the 13th. and to use this time window to offer a regular container ship. The port of NSR is Shanghai, Murmansk, Busan, Murmansk, Rotterdam, Hamburg, Murmansk, or it also can be converted to Petropavlovsk, Busan, and Shanghai. And port for the SCR is a very classic Asia-Europe Express from COSCO Shipping: Shanghai, Ningbo, Yantian, Flagstaff, Hamburg, Rotterdam, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. And in the model, we include the capital cost, operational cost, voyage cost, and in the capital cost, we have set two situations: the self-owned ships and the hired ships. Okay, next. Here is our cost structure of our model. We have crew wage, insurance, maintenance, port disbursement account, management, tariffs and tools, capital cost, and fuel cost. And all the data are the recent data according to current market change. For example, for the crew wage, due to the COVID-19, the crew wage has increased a lot because it becomes a heavy burden of shipping companies. And according to our investigation, the average crew wage is around 150,000 per month for a 20 cruise ship, and we add a 10% for NSR routes. And for the tariffs and tools, we search for the official website with the latest data and achieved the latest tariffs and tools. And for the fuel cost, we use the very low sulfur fuel oil and marine gas oil, so on and so forth. That's all we make the cost evaluation. Next page, please. So let's make a short summary about the comparison between the North Sea route and the Suez Canal route. Since the distance for a round trip via the NSR is 25% shorter than the Suez Canal route, so it can make 0.5 route more by the NSR. So with similar load factors, the NSR can transit more containers and make it have more revenue. So under the hired situation, let's see the cost structure. The fuel costs account for nearly 35% of the total cost on the NSR, and it's reached for 42% for the SAR. Due to the long distance, it costs more for the SCR. And the capital cost is account for 36 or 37% of the total cost on the NSR, and reduced to 32 compared with SCR. And the tariffs and tools are similarly on the two routes. So finally, we got the unit transportation cost in the hired situation and self-owned situation. We can see that the unit cost of the NSR is lower, both in the hired and self-owned situation. And the cost gap is enlarged under the self-owned situation. Okay, next page, please. Since all the parameters fluctuate, so we make a sensitivity analysis in the fuel cost, insurance, NSR tariff, and the load factor. First, let's see the fuel cost in the table. We can see that a 20% increase will erode the NSR's competitiveness. So it will likely happen because, sorry, back please. It will likely happen in the future because the data we use in the model is a 3-year average. And if we choose a 1-year average, let's say in this year, the very low sulfur fuel oil price reached about 900 USD per ton, just a double in our model. So it is very likely to be happening. So for a single or a 1-year voyage on the NSR, it cannot be profitable. You have to offer regular and long-term services for shipping companies to cover the fuel cost. And for the NSR tariffs, a 40% increase will decrease the competitiveness of NSR. And it also will be because, with more new icebreakers come into service, the capital burden of the Russian companies will increase. So it all depends on the bargaining power with Russia. And for the insurance cost, it didn't change too much. And finally, for the load factor, we can see that it's very important for the shipping company's revenue. A 10% decrease will also erode the NSR competitiveness. But for the time value of NSR, the companies will try everything to reach the load factor. For example, they can make one more port calling to increase the load factor. So that's our sensitivity analysis. And the next, please. Based on our sensitivity analysis, we draw the conclusion as following. And is it profitable for a year-round, regular, and safe navigation on the NSR? Our answer is no, because they have so many uncertainties, and they even have suffering from a financial budget for the Russian government to build so many icebreakers. And it is more profitable for the seasonal container transport through NSR for the shipping companies. We can see this table that the profit per TEU is around, under the high situation, it is 24 USD more than the Suez Canal, and it increased to 53 more under the own situation. But let's think, is it attractive enough for the shipping companies to open such a route with so many uncertainties? So in our view, we think with larger ships, maybe in the future, they can provide such kind of service because they can make much more revenues and more profit. Let's say, and if the leader icebreaker come into service, because on the traditional Far East European route, the average ship size is around 8,000 to 10,000. So if the NSR route can hold container ships more than 10,000, so it will be clearly that it's attractive for shipping companies. Okay, that's all. Thank you. 감사합니다.
Well, once again, thank you, Professor Jiawei Ge, for your insightful presentation. Well, yes, as a regular participant in the Arctic Shipping Seminar, based on the economic feasibility analysis, based on the really credible data, it's really impressive. You certainly did a great work. Thank you for sharing with us. And I believe, the participants, most of you already understand that. But just to remind you, let me briefly summarize the presentation. Well, first of all, using the NSR, he briefly shared with us the kind of history of the voyages made through the NSR. Roughly about 10-year period. Well, what personally I felt quite relative is that the shipping companies in Europe, what they think about the using NSR, it's quite interesting. So as you already know, the largest one, NSC and Maersk, so their view on utilizing NSR, it's quite important for all of us. So yes, many agree that due to the environmental concerns, still many are quite pessimistic, looking at the NSR as a really viable alternative. So as already explained in the presentation, Maersk, they carried out a kind of a pilot or experimental navigation through the NSR, but they concluded that it's not, at the moment at least, not economical. So, as far as I remember, the previous CEO of Maersk, said a couple of years ago that if one shipping company, is successful, to operating through the NSR, it's not relevant to Musk. That means Musk will not be the first one who will say, okay, NSR is, economically profitable. So, but it's quite, the good news that at least COSCO Shipping has a quite positive, perspective on utilizing the NSR, to thinking it's a strategically important and commercially viable. So again, to have a really safe, year-round operation through the NSR, the icebreaker ice court is really important, and also, securing ice class and ice-breaking capacity or equipped, container ships. So again, that is closely related to cost. So to that end, it was quite informative and beneficial to look at all the, the key parameters in terms of costs, including the fuel cost, the load factor, and port and route tariffs. So all in all, what I felt is that, so yes, just, having seasonal operation or navigation, meaning, it's just a summertime, at least during that period, it's quite clear that the NSR is quite competitive or relatively competitive if you compare against the, conventional Suez Canal. So again, it was a really insightful presentation that containing valuable data and which were, obviously not easy for us to access. So once again, thank you very much.
Now I'll invite the second presenter, and she is joining us online. And that's Professor Heying Jia from Norway, and she will be presenting us on the container shipping, capex, and fuel consumption concerning NSR. Professor Jia, are you ready for the presentation? Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you very much. My name again, Heying Jia. I'm from Norwegian School of Economics. It's a great pleasure to attend this event. I'm very happy to share with you some thoughts and analytical results on the expected capital expenditure and fuel consumption for the container shipping industry if or when the Northern Sea Route is fully operational for the industry on a mass scale. Next, please. So the flow of my talk is as such. First, I will start at answering the question, what do we have in the current container ship fleet, including ordinary and ice-class container ships? The second, I will illustrate how the analysis is performed. Finally, I'll present you the results with why I say what I say and what are the implications. Next, please. Before going into details, the success of the Northern Sea Route is dependent on, above everything, a secure geopolitical environment, as we all agree. To have flourishing international trade via a certain trading route, friction should be avoided and reduced. This trade friction includes, of course, for example, sanctions, blockage, or barriers that are negative for transportation security and transparency. And parties involved in the trade, including cargoes, owners, ship owners, and crews, need to be safe and also have certain predictability. Also, the Northern Sea Route as a trading route would require sufficient investment from multiple stakeholders. The trading route would not flourish if it's only being sailed by a few ships and used by limited ship owners. So when demand increases, the software and hardware of the route can improve, which will then benefit all the stakeholders. And moreover, the development of the route, the Northern Sea Route, needs to have a positive environmental impact on top of being economically feasible for stakeholders, so that the development can fit well in the environmental focus and stay sustainable in the long run. Next, please. So to answer the question, what do we have? Let's have a look at the current container ship fleet. The first, the ice-class container ships. We follow the Swedish and Finnish ice-class system. According to Clarkson's World Fleet Register, currently we have in total 17 vessels with IA, IB, and IC classes. And size ranges between 3,000 and 4,000 TEU. The IA corresponds to ARC 4 and 5 in the Russian system, IB corresponds to ICE 3, and IC is ICE 2. And then there are about 300 vessels with Category 2 class container ships, the size ranging between 4,000 to 11,000 TEU. So given that the ice-free days in the Northern Sea route have increased to 88 days, as we know, in 2020, and scientists have predicted that the Arctic could be ice-free by 2040, and the summer sea ice could disappear as early as 2035. So we have the view that the Category 2 ice class vessels could be very much in demand. Therefore, in the following analysis, the above 300 ice class vessels, including from IA to Category 2, are treated as one group, without differentiating among the classes. So the fleet profile with regards to age, size, new building price, and fuel consumption ton per day is compared to the ordinary container ships. Then to sum up, the ice class container ship fleet has the year of build between 2006 and 2013. We have design speed between 19 and 25 knots, new building price between 40 million to 130 million US dollar. And the fuel consumption ranges from 40 to 310 tons per day. Next, please. Now, let's take a look at the ordinary container ship fleet, which basically represents the capacity supply for containerized cargo seaborne transportation. And the details of the fleet are shown in the table. There are about 2,200 vessels currently, size ranging from 3,000 to 24,000 TEU, with an average age of 12 years. With the current large order book, the average age will become younger in the next few years. So when the NSR is fully utilized, this vessel capacity is then subject to be replaced by ice class vessels. That's the idea behind the analysis. So that's the foundation for the following analysis. In other words, the ordinary container ship fleet profile, including size, new building price, and fuel consumption, is firstly compared to the ice class vessels. And then a simulation is performed to answer the question, what if ice class vessels are utilized on the Northern Sea route to place the ordinary container vessels on the traditional Suez Canal route? Next, please. So now we perform a statistical comparison of new building price and fuel consumption between ordinary and ice class container ships. In both of these graphs, the red bars represent the ice class vessels at different size categories for new building price on the left and fuel consumption on the right. And the dark blue bars represent the comparable ordinary container ships within the same size category. The light blue bars represent the large container ships above 12,000 TEU that do not have comparables in the ice class. So the left graph answers the question, do ice class vessels cost more to build? The answer is, it depends on the size. The statistical test results suggest for the larger vessels between 6,000 to 12,000 TEU, it is more capital intensive to build ice class vessels, but not for the smaller size, 3,000 to 6,000 TEU category. And then the right side graph answers the question, do ice class vessels consume more bunker fuel? The results show again, for the larger size vessels, the answer is yes, but not for the 3,000 to 6,000 TEU size category. The fuel consumption for larger size ice class vessels is much higher than ordinary vessels. For the 9,000 to 12,000 TEU, category ice class vessels consume on average 64 tons per day more fuel than ordinary vessels. And the results are consistent when we control the year of build, i.e. for the same age vessels. So far we've seen the supply side. Then what about the demand? And next, please. According to trade data, the eastbound trade volume between Europe and Far East is 7.4 million TEU in 2022, and the forecasted volume will be similar in 2023, and the westbound trade volume between the two regions is 16.6 million TEU. So in principle, in theory, part of the total trade volume of 24 million TEU is eligible to be transported via the Northern Sea route. Of course, conditional on the opening days and supply capacity, etc. Another point I'd like to quickly draw your attention is that if we assume trade grows at 3% per annum, the trade volume will be 130% more of the current volume in 2050. In other words, the trade volume will double in 23 years. So any efforts we make today need to consider the compounding effect in trade growth. Next, please. Now, so let's run a simulation so that the transportation supply, the fleet capacity, meets the trade demand via the Northern Sea route and Suez Canal route on certain conditions. So the idea of the simulation is that if X number million of a TEU is transported on the Northern Sea route, how many ice class vessels are needed, given the sailing speed and the vessel size? In the simulation model, Northern Sea route is assumed to be open between 60 to 120 days. That is 2 to 4 months. So it's seasonal. And we assume even trade demand distribution throughout the year. That means, for example, in the case of 90 days NSR being open, that is a quarter of a year in time, so that a quarter of the demand of 24 million TEU can be transported via the Northern Sea in theory. So obviously, ordinary container ships continue to trade on the Suez Canal route, and ice class ships trade on the Northern Sea route with various size combinations and sailing speed scenarios. And you can see the parameters in the table. The other parameters we included are 28% distance shortening between the two routes, 5 days, 7 to 25 knots, a speed range, and the size availability is based on the current fleet profile, which I have shown you in the beginning. That is, ice class vessels stay below 11,500 TEU, and ordinary container ships can go up to 24,000 TEU. So the question we try to answer is, with the fully operational Northern Sea route at varying opening durations between 2 to 4 months in the summer, how much the industry needs to invest in the ice class vessels to replace the ordinary vessels? And the next question is, what is the impact on total fuel consumption? Next, please. So what do we find? 2 words to summarize. Size matters. Compared to ordinary vessels at size smaller than 12,000 TEU, replacing them with ice class vessels does not increase the overall capex. But to replace larger vessels, it would cost the industry much more. The reason is the famous economies of scale. So compared to one 20,000 TEU container ship. To build two of 10,000 TEU ships would cost much more than one mega ship. But for a 10,000 TEU container ship, even though it costs slightly more to build a similar size ice-class vessel, the quicker turnaround, driven by shorter distance on the Northern Sea route, compensates the slightly higher CapEx. So utilizing larger ice-class vessels, as we heard from the previous speaker, Alden's route, makes better economic sense due to the economies of scale. The condition is that the new building price difference between ordinary and ice-class vessels stays stable, as we have seen in the fleet in the past. If there's a structure change in shipbuilding, for example, a drastic decrease of new building price for ice-class ships, the result will be, of course, different. And moreover, the simulation results show that utilizing the Northern Sea route reduces fuel consumption and, of course, emission overall, with very rare exception of comparing to the mega ships above 20,000 TEU. This is attributed to the nearly 30% distance reduction, which of course compensates the moderately higher fuel consumption for ice-class ships on the vessel basis. Next, please. So, in an ideal world, mega ships sail on the Suez Canal route and smaller to medium vessel traffic can be diverted to the Northern Sea route when it is open, so that the overall capex for the industry does not increase and the total emission is reduced due to the shorter distance. Another aspect is that the development in the Northern Sea route fits well in the green transition. Apart from lower emission mentioned above, the route also provides a better way to transport energy sources in the Arctic, you see the oil transportation. It may also incentivize planning and investment in alternative fueled vessels, including ice-class and icebreakers and ordinary vessels. But of course, challenges remain, as we know, the dominance of one country in the route, the navigation safety in the Arctic, rescue and salvage efforts in the extreme weather conditions, and the investment in related infrastructures. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. Well, like the first presentation, your presentation was very insightful. And if we had more time, we wish we could have more detailed information about your presentation. We are about 10 minutes behind our schedule, and maybe next time, please enlighten us what you will study a little bit more. Thank you for your presentation, Professor Jia. In particular, you ran the simulation to analyze the economic aspect of the NSR. So that was very insightful, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, now we will move on to the third presentation. It will be delivered by Professor Hong Sang-won under the topic of Korea's response to Russia's Northern Transit Corridor, called NTC in short, and contain ship containers. His presentation will also include, countermeasures from South Korea. So please welcome Professor Hong with a warm round of applause. Okay, once again, hello everyone. My name is Hong Sang-won. I'm a professor at Yongsan University. As already introduced, the topic of my presentation today is Korea's response to Northern Transit Corridor and container shipping in relation to the NRS, Northern Sea Route, NSR regulations by the Russian government. So, as you already know, the Russian government has already implemented a number of regulations related to operation throughout the Northern Series. So to that end, I'd like to briefly share with you what we are doing in Korea. So I will start my presentation with a brief introduction of the NSR navigation, followed by Russian government's NSR development plans, and also to share with you NTC trends and international joint researches on the NSR, and to conclude my presentation with the strategies and countermeasures. So this is, produced on an annual basis. So as shown on the slide, yes, we have still, some more weeks before we wrap up this year. But as you can see, we expect to have about, 34,000, TU, a little bit, down from previous years. So, this is also lower than our, anticipation or target, roughly 83%, if I remember correctly. So once again, it's not a big, gap, but due to the crisis in Ukraine, the international transit was almost, non-existent this year. And this slide shows the comparison of the number of applications for NSR navigation by ship's flag. So the blue bars represent the trend last year. So compared to previous year, the number of vessels applied for approval to navigate through NSR decreased quite a lot, as you can see, in particular foreign flagships. And if you look at Netherlands and Norway, those vessels from these countries were mainly employed for dredging and construction activities. Due to time constraints, I will just briefly summarize my presentation. So
원자력
there is the Russian nuclear container vessel called Float. So this vessel traveled 2 times, once in the spring and recently the second time. So in the first navigation, the vessel didn't carry much cargo volume, roughly 10%. But the second navigation, it carried around 9% of the cargo volume. So some of the cargo exported to East Asia. The significance here I can share with you is that as we move forward, what the Russian government and Rosatom anticipate in the future is that to fully utilize the NSR and also NTC, that they now plan to make the right foundations, make good preparations. So this slide also shows the Arctic projects. So in the Russian Arctic, maybe the Arctic LNG-2 is one of the essential project there. So to that end, obviously Chinese shipyards are producing a number of modules to that end. So I believe about 90 modules were constructed, some of them transported, but this project cargo, heavy lift cargo, since many Western or the European shipping companies, and they withdrew, so not all of them were transported. So again, then this slide shows delayed infrastructure development for the Northern Sea route. So again, many Western vessels were involved in the dredging and construction activities in the Russian Arctic region. Unfortunately, due to the current crisis in Ukraine and also sanctions imposed on Russia, many of them withdrew. And this slide explains Northwest Passage and Wagenborg's continuous use of the NSR. So once again, Northwest Passage is just operational as usual. So cargo, loaded from China, they are transported, and from Canada, PARP, they are still without a major disruption, well transported. Some of them are actually exported to South Korea as well. And second, let me move on to Russian government's NSR development plans. So back in 2019, December, this was already announced, but recently there were some updates or revisions. So now that they introduce some specific measures, policy measures, and let me briefly share with you. There are 5 main sectors of the plan. So first one is to establish a really robust cargo base. So regarding promoting the international transit in the NSR, based on the Russian government's plan, the Russian container shipping company is expected to be established. That's planned in 2024. Initial plan was to have it established in 2025, but as part of Russian government's NTC project, ice-breaking capacity, the fleet will be established. But again, due to various geopolitical developments, this plan will be delivered later than expected. So this slide shows NSR cargo traffic by 2024. As I already explained to you, this year the cargo traffic decreased slightly, and a couple of years from now we still anticipate that there will be some difficulties still remaining. And this slide shows Northern Sea Route's resource bases. There are several projects in place. Actually, previous speakers mentioned as well, the Russian government, their main target is to export the energy sources developed and extracted from the Arctic region to the European nations and also to Asia. But this, ice class container ships, if they are not provided enough in volume, in numbers, then obviously there will be some difficulties as well. And to building new icebreakers, there are already planned schedules, timelines, and which vessel will be deployed for which products are already well defined in advance. But in fact, these ice class or icebreakers will be enough to support the increasing international transit. There's a big question mark, to be honest with you. And this is based on the data announced from Rosatom in July.
내용은 아니지만
I have not looked into much in detail, but if you look at the table, financing structure for each sector. So as you can see, off-budget financing is quite large. So this clearly shows that there will be quite heavy burden on the shoulders of the resource developers, non-Russian resource developers. And about 90 years ago, we should go back to, so back then there was a kind of a uniform. That means, the system, the control system, that means, more power or control given to the central government. Now Russia is going back to that system. So, in our institute, we are constantly monitoring what's happening in the, Northern Transit Corridor. It's not that complicated. So transshipment hubs in Murmansk and Vladivostok. These two ports are serving as main transshipment hubs. And between Murmansk and Vladivostok, with just conventional vessels. But Murmansk and Vladivostok, these routes will be actually navigated by the ice-class vessels. And there are kind of combination of the conventional and ice-class container ships. So Busan Port Authority, they announced an initiative to actually invest about $2 billion of investment. So we are also monitoring as well, but no details are disclosed yet. So this slide briefly explains the NTC ice-breaking container ships. Arc 8, 5,650 TEU, but the building schedule is a little bit delayed. So that means the pilot shipping schedule will be delayed as well by 1 year. And in Murmansk, roughly 1 million TEU per year, we believe will be handled. And in the port of Vladivostok, 1.6 million TEU throughput will be available as they build or reinforced infrastructure there. And Tasco, and they are really eager. The Russian government is very eager to reinforce their infrastructure and attract more cargo volumes. So previous speakers already mentioned on this, so I will skip this part and let me touch upon this one actually. So the same goes here. SNIMP, the economic, the feasibility studies are was introduced in previous presentations. So once again, we all would like to have, year-round, regular, safe, operation through the NSR. Will that be possible, feasible? So obviously, there are, economic comparisons between the NSR and the conventional Suez route. We also looked into that as well. So, do we have enough cargo volumes to secure the economic feasibility? Last but not least, regarding the container ship operation through the NSR in South Korea in particular, what are the countermeasures required for Busan Port authorities? So there are several scenarios that we can actually take into account. There are three, and just to simplify it. So first one is that, of course, the key parameter here is that when this crisis in Ukraine will end, and the subsequent sanctions imposed on Russia, when they will be lifted. And for NTC projects, will it attract, the same level of investment from foreign countries and companies? So if you look at the crisis in Ukraine, even if it ends, in the near future, if the sanctions imposed on Russia still continue, remain in place, then still it will pose a great challenge for all the stakeholders to develop or operate through the NSR. And if this current situation continues, for a long-term period, still there will be great challenges ahead. But among the three scenarios, maybe relatively positive one is the scenario 3, prolonged crisis. There's one scenario is that all the end of a Ukrainian crisis and the lifting of sanctions against Russia in the near future. So the Western companies and their investment and cargo volumes are returning to the NSR, then once again it will be opening the doors for more opportunities. But still, the port infrastructure is still not enough. So we are keeping a really close eye on the infrastructure. This current status in the Vladivostok in particular. Again, they need a lot of investment, and certainly there's a really big room for improvement. So I think I missed out just one point here. The Western sanctions imposed on Russia, if it stays as they do now, obviously, there are pro-Russian countries. Namely Russia, Arab Emirates recently joined the ranks, and Turkey as well. And there are a couple of Eastern European countries. So from what we see, the relationship between Russia and China, the collaboration between the two countries will be strengthened. If the current situation remains the same, that means ports in China and the network with Vladivostok port will be strengthened. And if you look at the situation in Busan port, Busan port is well known for transshipment of container cargo. So in the Far East Asia, I think we should still maintain our strategies to serve as the hub, transshipment hub. So to summarize my presentation, back in 2014, they just announced that their target is to achieve 80 million tons of NSR cargo traffic. But as I already mentioned, this is a really tough, goal to achieve, considering the current situation and the Russian government's their NTC project. Without having close collaboration or involvement and investment from the Western world, it's really difficult to deliver that project as well as planned. And as already mentioned by previous speakers, in particular, regarding economic feasibility, yes, it is still true that there is seasonal limitations. At least we need to have 8-month window for operation, but it's only 5 months at the moment based on the analysis available. So back in 2018, Venta Maersk, they navigated as a pilot project, I think it was about 3 months back then. But again, we should have a more wider window of operations throughout the NSR. So last not but least, the Russian government, meaning, Rosatom, more specifically Rosatom Cargo, it's a logistics, subsidiary of Rosatom. Their plan to attract and operate a cargo, shipping, if they actually run smoothly as planned, I think Busan Port should also be well prepared to tap into that opportunity. Once again, it is essential for us to secure the, high level of a transshipment cargo. So we need to fully, utilize the, cargo volume from the Chinese ports and also in the Eastern Asian region, so that we can once again, take one step further to serve as a really important hub port in Northeast Asia. Thank you for listening. Professor Hong, thank you very much for your presentation. Again, to NSR Transit, I think there's no one who has better knowledge than you. So it was really, good information that you shared with us. But unfortunately, geopolitical, conditions at the moment, that poses great challenges to that end. And regarding NTC project, you shared with us the current status, the history, and also, the way forward. So yes, the previous two speakers shared with us a little bit different perspectives. Even though, NSR, operational periods are shortened, still the economic feasibility, there are some mixed kind of pictures, some positive, some negative. But Professor Hong, as far as I heard, had a still relatively pessimistic, view on that. So regarding NTC project, there are related or the stakeholders of countries. So yes, it's quite, it's a sensitive issue to talk about. India, Turkey, and China. Yes, so-called, pro-Russian countries. If China has a great interest or increasing interest in the NTC project, if they are interested in making investments even, I think the port of Busan maybe have a little bit of a complicated situation to respond to. But in conclusion, if you look at the NTC project, despite these challenges and bottlenecks, still the port of Busan to remain as the transshipment hub port in Northeast Asia, we still have to make efforts as well. So we cannot just sit back and do nothing. So once again, this wraps up the session 3.
We are going to get started with the panel discussion right away. And the presenters and the discussants, including Director of Sinocor Merchant Marine and Mr. Lee Dong-wook from Unical Logics, please come up to the stage for the panel discussion. And the moderator of the panel discussion will be Professor Park Ho-chul, and I'd like to ask Professor Park to sit on the stage. And Dr. Kim Hyun-chul, please come up to the stage for the panel discussion.
그리고 종합 토론은
And we are going to invite the presenters who are joining us online to the panel discussion as well. And I'd like to pass the microphone to the moderator of the panel discussion, Professor Park, and we're going to continue with the panel discussion. And it is winter now, and it is getting dark outside, I think. And what I feel sorry is that we didn't have enough time to get more insights from the presenters. I wish I had more time. According to the program schedule, I'd like to ask Director Park Seok-tae of Sinocor Merchant Marine and Mr. Lee Dong-wook of Unical Logics to give us comments and a summary of the presentations we had today, and along with your comments. Mr. Park, please go ahead. Good evening. I am Park Seok-tae from Sinocor Merchant Marine. Sinocor is a merchant marine that operates the container feedering to 2 Russian ports, including Vladivostok. And we are also operating the ships to even the Southwest Asia, including India. But as we're focusing on the Arctic shipping routes, we operate the feeder service to 2 ports in Russia. And we handle about 30,000 TEU every month with Russia. And I really enjoy the presentations we had from the perspective of a merchant marine or shipping company. In order to operate the Arctic shipping routes, I believe there are 4 conditions to be met. The passage should be sustainable. And the second is it should have a competitive edge compared to SCR. So the year-round operation must be possible to be competitive. And the third is we need to secure the economic vessels. And the fourth condition is IMO and other international organizations came up with the environmental issues. So in terms of environment, we should see whether it is really environmentally friendly to use this Arctic shipping route. And Arctic Sea route is rarely handling the international cargoes. NSR is mainly used for domestic cargo shipping for Russia. And there are some risks in terms of navigation, like weather forecast or ice. Until all those issues are resolved, the regular operation of the shipping vessels is not feasible yet. And in the third session, the presenters did the economic analysis of the Arctic shipping routes, and some of the results were conflicting, and some of them I couldn't really understand. But I personally believe in order to build ice-class vessels, the cost will increase from the conventional vessels, and the fuel consumption will also increase. Although the distance will be shorter, so the fuel can be saved because of the shorter distance. But another factor that we have to look at is we have to think about the speed of passing through the Suez Canal and the Arctic Sea routes. And the SCR, in the SCR, the vessels pass at the speed of about 17 to 20 knots. But for the Arctic Sea route, I'm not really sure about the figure. I believe it is about 11 nautical miles. And if navigating about 16 k mile at the speed of 17 knots is similar to navigating the shorter distance at 11 note is the same. So there is no savings in the fuel. So the insurance premium or the passage tariff and fuel consumption. In terms of all these factors, using this Arctic Sea route may not be economically feasible. And we really say it is economically advantageous, but those economic advantages may be reduced with other factors as well. And there are many variables, including the international oil price or the technical developments in shipbuilding. And considering all these factors from the shipper's point of view, I believe the Arctic Sea route should continue to be developed. That's it from me. Thank you, Mr. Park. Mr. Park has long been engaging in the shipping industry, and I believe he pointed out a very important point. And I also have a background of this ocean-related business. So the Arctic Sea route, in order for the safe passage of the NSR, those are the four factors that must be guaranteed. So, safe passage of the route must be guaranteed. And the second point is what is most important with the NSR is the year-round navigation. I believe if it is not possible, as we could see from the presentations, at least 5 months or 10 months should be open for the this navigation in the NSR, and we have to secure ice class vessels to be able to operate in those routes. And another important topic is the environmental issue related to using the NSR. So those are the four factors that Mr. Park raised. And we have participants joining us online. And I believe there are many questions that are raised online. I have this question to Mr. Park first, and then we'll move on to the next part of the discussion. And Sinocor Merchant Marine is a very famous Asian feeder, and it is a bit far away from the NSR. But as Professor Hong mentioned, although there are issues related to the NTC project, from the perspective of the Port of Busan, in order to maintain the transshipment port in the Northeast Asia, we have to pursue this project. And is there any thing that you are developing in relation to NTC, or is there any strategy related to this part of the routes? If any, please let us know. About 5 years ago, we signed an MOU with Rosatom to conduct a joint research, but due to some issues, it has been stopped. And our view is we are not a ship liner that engages in the European line, and we are not reviewing the European routes, but the routes that we operate from Busan to Vladivostok, that's about 30,000 TEU a month, and that is for the cargo that is domestically consumed, and some of them will go to Moscow or the East Europe. So when the NSR is fully operated, we believe the cargo that the route should be also used. So we have to maintain our attention to that. And in terms of the distance shortened, if the distance is longer, there will be some advantage. But if so, I believe the Busan's role as a hub will get more important, and the cargo to China, Vietnam, or Thailand. The cargo from those countries come to Busan and do the transshipment there. So if the NSR is in full operation, the role of Busan Port will be also important. So we are paying attention to this for various reasons.
Yes, it was a really important point you mentioned. So I really look forward to seeing the further active engagement from the Sinocor Merchant Marine in the development and operation of the NSR through the NTC. So let me move on to the second discussant, Mr. Lee Dong-wook. He's a team leader at Unico Logistics. So please share your comments and ideas with us. Okay, following last year, that this is my second time to join the Arctic shipping seminar. Compared to what we discussed last year, they are quite interesting and fresh, topics, and I find it very, yeah, positive that we have a lot of more commercial, perspectives discussed this year. So, and also it was interesting to see the researches on ice conditions, and all these are actually impacting the operation of the 3D NSR for shipping companies. And again, it was really valuable for me to see the really valuable data shared for the first time in the world. But still, there is a room for improvement. So if I may, I'd like to share with you the future direction. So what I thought after, hearing the presentations is that from Arctic, Mr. Shetrick, in his presentation, it was quite interesting to see the ship design, the container ships for year-round operation in the, NSR. So, as one involved in the industry, if this vessel is, deployed in real operation, not just for the, ship operation, it's also quite connected to the container cargo operation, and also from the, in the second session, Mr. Morton also shared really important factors. So, if you, when you navigate through the NSR, I mean, containers will be affected by the sea ice, and waters will be actually on the split on the splashing of seawater on the containers. These all will affect the containers and ships as well. When designing the vessels, what kind of elements do you take into consideration to have a safer operation and shipping of the containers? Yes, we are talking about year-round operation, but if you look at the different seasons, winter and summer, how to maintain the robust quality of the containers and the cargo contained in those vessels, and what are the impacts of loading and offloading those containers. And also there were presentations on the research institutes that touched upon the Russia's NSR policies and regulations. Yes, there's no doubt that, and it's quite, natural for, Russian governments to put a lot of efforts and making plans to further develop the NSR. But, the TSR route, Trans-Siberian route, that it means. But when we have, extended use of, NSR, are those two routes in competition? We are making comparisons with the conventional Suez routes, but these, Trans-Siberian route, are we considering as an, quite important factor here? So now mostly we are talking about the comparison between NSR and conventional Suez route. So if you look at the geopolitical condition at the moment, in the Far East, there are a lot of cargo shipped from Russia and Far East countries to European nations. So I just wonder personally, what kind of future policies or plans they have in Russia. And from Shanghai Maritime University, from commercial perspectives, it was really interesting to listen to your presentation. So based on your research activities, I think maybe it would be better if you can actually have a deeper understanding, having really good collaboration, not just amongst research institutes, but involving the industry as well. So if you look at the operation and also economic feasibility of the NSR, I had a feeling that you did not actually put great importance on transshipment, but obviously I think it's a quite important factor. So, economic scale, it's not achieved just having bigger vessels. We need to have, more feeder operation, better efficiency. So from the starting departing ports and arriving ports, how are we going to offset the losses incurred? And between Rotterdam and Hamburg, that's part of your, conditions. What are the increase of the fixed costs with having bigger and ice class vessels? Maybe these should also be taken into account in deeper level, and maybe this opens the door for further or follow-up research activities, not just amongst, once again, research institute or universities, but involving the commercial, actually shipping companies. And last but not least, my question to Professor Hong, the last presenter. At the end of your presentation, you briefly touched upon the, actions to be taken by the Port of Busan. Yes, when we talk about NSR, yes, Busan Port should fully tap into that opportunity and becoming or taking a farm road as a transshipment hub in the region. But if you look further or more deeper, even if we open the door for utilizing the NSR, will it really bring more, cargo volume to Busan? If you consider, those cargo volume from Shanghai and other parts of China and other parts of Asia, if NSR is further developed, I think there's also a possibility that those cargo volumes will be directly just transported or shipped to Russia, not passing Busan port. So I have a question mark that, is it really possible for Busan port to secure or even increase a cargo volume for transshipment to be a hub in the region? So to that end, this is obviously a big question or big, homework to address by the Busan Port Authority and the South Korean government in general. So that's my question and comment.
발표한 그 모든
So basically, he made comments to all the presentations we had today, and of them, three could require additional explanation. I think that is very interesting. And NSR and TSR, competition between NSR and TSR. Who was the one who made comment on this, or who made the competition between Trans-Siberia route and the NSR? So Russia already has the TSR, but if people are interested in the NSR, whether it is TSR or NSR, it has to go through Russia. So what is the difference? So there was a possibility. The question is about the possibility of the reduced cargo volume going through the TSR. That is right. So from Russia, the policy on the NSR could be going well in the early stage, but if is in full operation, it will cannibalize the cargo for the TSR. I believe Professor Moy can answer this question, maybe. 네.
Can you did you fully catch up the comment from Mr. Lee about TSR and NSR? As you know, TSR is kind of any competitive route to NSR anyway. To the point of Russia, NSR, TSR is all Russians and territory. So how do you forecast if the NSR is vitalized? What is the effect to the existing route TSR? Please tell us the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a certain level of competition, and it has been discussed many times in Russia. But in the later years, the estimates and the projections for increased transit on the NSR has in a way made that issue moot, because as of today, over the last years, the capacity, as I mentioned, on the Trans-Siberian Railroad has been quite well utilized. So it hasn't really been that much room for expansion. So expansion of east-west trade will have to come on the Northern Sea route. However, if you're looking into a scenario where general economic activity in Russia goes down, and also trade between Russia and other countries goes down, it is possible that there will be more free capacity on the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And in such a scenario, I would say that there is a likelihood of more competition between cargo on the Northern Sea route and the Trans-Siberian Railroad, if you understand my reasoning. So it hasn't been an important issue last few years, but it could become an issue, because of course the Trans-Siberian Railroad also has many stakeholders in Russia.
Okay, Mr. Watt, thank you.
Due to time constraint, we're going to move on to the second question.
시간이 충분히.
Well, looks like we do not have all the time necessary to have the right discussion, but Mr. Gay, can you hear me?
Mr. Jiwei Ge? Are you ready for answer the question from Mr. Lee?
Sorry, please
Okay,
pardon.
yeah.
My internet is not well. Yeah.
Okay, if I tell again, as you know, excellent. I'm receiving very strong impression from your insightful presentation. But Mr. Lee has one simple question. As you know, your research is totally focused on the direct calling from Asia to Europe. However, there are some cases the cargo should be transshipped just inside NSR. In that case, it can cause additional cost. So how do you just evaluate the transshipment, just any the impact in this NSR, any route, any justification?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my PowerPoint, there is another choice for the shipping companies. Let the Russian company take control the transit on the NSR between Murmansk and the port at Far East. But as far as we know, Russia is not qualified now to offer such kind of services. But if we, given the shipping company, the other shipping company, foreign shipping companies, can take part in the transshipment services between these two ports, that will change all the maritime networks between Far East and Europe. Because, for example, the Korean shipping company or our Chinese shipping companies can offer feeder services between Busan, between Vladivostok, between Petropavlovsk. There will be formed a new regional maritime network in the Far East and in the Europe side. So, but it needs to get some quantitative analysis. Yes.
Yes, I fully understand. Okay, thank you very much for your comment. But actually, it is 100% possible. You know, there are so many variations in your research. Anyway, I think that is full enough for a clarification about Mr. Lee's question anyway. And also, the third question from Mr. Lee is given to Mr. Morten Lassen. Mr. Lassen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, Mr. Lee has pointed one important question anyway. When I understand, when the shipping companies or shipyards are designing the vessel anyway, maybe in case of NSR, there are so many negative impact that is coming mostly from the environment issues. For example, as you mentioned, like a sea wave, any spray, something like that anyway, yeah? So in case of a container ship, sometimes because of any icing at the port, it is not possible to discharge or load the container from or to the ships anyway. How do you just think about any additional extra factors to be considered when we design the ships for NSR and navigation? Please give us any simple comment on the question.
Yes. Yeah, as I mentioned, the main factor is, of course, ice strengthening, that you have to build the vessel with a high ice class. And you have to remember, you are building a ship that is going to operate for the next 25, 30 years. So the additional cost and additional weight you put on the ship, you have to bring with you the rest of the vessel's lifetime. That means you need to ensure that you can operate this ship in polar waters for the whole lifetime of the ship. With regard to additional measures to winterize the ship, to prevent the effect of sea spray icing, low temperatures, etc., you need to ensure that ballast water tanks are not freezing, air intakes, additional insulation and all this. That will add cost that you have to consider for the vessel's lifetime. We had a project 12 years ago looking at container shipping in polar waters, and what the owners told us today, that their focus is just in time, just in time, just in time. And this is very difficult to combined with the uncertainties going in ice and polar waters, where you can have a limited season. You can go some of the tours through the north, to the north, and some you have to go through Suez, which makes it difficult. Another point is also the cargo owners are coming more and more into the picture. They are putting up requirements to limit emission on their transport. So they put requirements to the ship owners and operators with regard to reduced emissions that we have to consider in the future, and when we are considering shipping in polar areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your clear comment on Mr. Lee's question. Anyway, thank you again. 이게 지금 우리가 혹시 뭐 플로어에서 질문이
Do we have any questions from the floor? Professor Hong? I think it was, Mr. Lee Jong-uk, briefly touched upon the, roles of the Busan port. Yes. Well, I'd like to extend my appreciation to the comments of the panelists. So let me share a couple of more ideas. Back in 2010, in May, Russian Transportation Ministry actually organized a seminar to revitalize or further develop the NSR. Back then, what we discussed is that I was sitting right next to the CEO of Tesco. So what he said is that, he also mentioned about the competition between NSR and TSR. So, back then, the answer from the Russian, authority was that, yes, to some extent, there is a kind of a competition. So, yes, I think it's quite interesting to look further into that aspect, the competition between the NSR and the TSR. But, we still need to have more, analysis. And what I missed out is that from Vladivostok to Murmansk, we are looking into possible transshipment. It's a little bit like cabotage shipping. But yes, of course, there's a question mark that can the Russian government really achieve the 3,000 the TEU of the transshipment cargo? That's their plan. Can they really achieve that in the nearest future? So I actually asked the question to one of the officials from the Russian government. So, well, they said the 5 million TEU tons. Not TEU, excuse me, tons. That's mainly related to the projects cargo, so like Rotterdam and Busan. So I briefly mentioned that maybe you need to look into that possibility. Last but not least, to the cargo volume from the Southeast Asia, I fully agree with you. And in fact, if you look at what's discussed, recently in November in the Russian government, again, this year there's almost, zero international transit through the NSR. So how to secure or recover the international transit through the NSR? There was a discussion that they should build closer cooperation or attract involvement of the Western companies and countries as well. So to that end, I think Korea can play a part, and the port of Busan can also engage as well. Thank you. Well, again, so we are running out of time, but I'd like to once again open the opportunities to the floor as well for the, just general participants to share their comments and questions as well. So I can see maybe more than a dozen here. So from the floor, before I actually give the chance to the floor, but to...
So I'd like to ask Professor Hae-Young Jia for your comments.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Then as a moderator, I'd like to give you one question which can be sometimes somewhat difficult for you to answer. But somebody before your presentation has presented one point. That is the the basic just any plan for the Russia is to establish two international hub ports. One is Murmansk, and the other in Asia is Vladivostok. Have you heard about that project before?
Yes.
So I think in the case, as the shipping companies anyway, if the Russian plan is carried out in future without any change or amendment anyway, in the case anyway, if they operate any two international hub ports, between those two ports, it is done by the only cabotage transportation. This means transported by the Russian flagship only anyway, yeah? So what about in that case, what do you think if the Russian plan is carried out as their plan, do you think it can justify the just NSR route as an effective way? Please give us your just answer for that question anyway.
Yes, that is a good question. It can be quite hard to answer, but in my view, or in some of my colleagues' view, we haven't touched upon during this seminar is alternative fueled vessels, including icebreakers. And if Russia put a lot of effort or financial investment in this related area, that can be financially viable if, for example, nuclear-powered vessels. So they have two main hubs, and then we have transshipment from Europe to the Western port and from Far East to the other side. But that's all depend on technology development and financial investment into this area. And again, safety, security is the top priority.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Actually, this is not totally fixed yet, but as you know, somebody has presented about that point. Russia has a plan to operate in two international hub ports by the cabotage transportation anyway. Yeah? I think in the case, this must be the critical and very basic point for the material for your further research about the justification of the NSR route anyway compared to Suez Canal transportation anyway. Okay? Okay, thanks for your answer for my personal question anyway. Because of a time limit, I'd like to maybe anybody who want to comment on
혹시
this issue, or otherwise, actually, Mr. Kiero, what about your general idea about the presentation from many of the just presenters? What is the point for the maybe actually you're on the economic side anyway, for operational side anyway. What is the point for the NSR? Or please give us some comment on that.
Well, the overall comment is that the stage now and the effect of the war is very unpredictable and very uncertainty. So it's a lot of speculation how this is going to look like in the future. We heard the presenter saying this is the Russian waterway is going to develop according to Russian plan, but still the uncertainty of the cargo base, the growth of the Russian economy, the market uncertainty is question that is difficult to predict. We heard China now, like Arimo mentioned, what's their interest now, how is their part of the market is going to develop. It is going interesting. We heard Professor Fong's scenarios. That's interesting, how we're going to retake and how it's going to be in the future. The discussion we have in Northern Norway is how will this look like the next 20, 30, 40 years? Is it going to be Arctic is going to develop into a Cold War scenario? Are we going to be developed as a national park with a lot of regulations, perhaps even banning of shipping? Or is it going to be a Klondike, where we're going to develop, all the resources? And I think there's going to be strict. Morten mentioned some points which is quite good when it comes to development of the container shipping. Another point, I think also the creditors, the banks will put very strict regulations on the ships and emissions. So we need to go into this green. I think the point from the professor from NHS when it comes to this development of the shipping hubs, yes, our researchers have done a lot of calculation in this, But as soon as you start to transship cargo, you have an additional cost of layers. So the validation of such a transshipment is more accurate if you look at these ice-class ships in the wintertime. Interesting to follow, but still, Russia needs to invest heavily in this program if it's going to be succeed. So thank you. I think that was a comment.
여기 이제 두 분께서 좀 코멘트가 없으셨는데 우리 프로페서 우또 what about your general view about the seminar or
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for joining very interesting seminar. So yeah, I have a lot of things learned from this seminar. I want to say 2 points. One is the sustainability, and the other is the predictability. Unpredictability, it's a more precise way. So I am an engineering person, so sustainability goes directly to the safety and efficiency. Yeah. And other person think sustainability and environmental issues is indispensable for the sustainable development in the Northern Sea route. So it means that, I think so. Many people think other opinions. So in this view, so I think so the discussions among the variety of stakeholders is important for the future development of Northern Sea route. One is the other is the predictability. So, and in my presentation, predictability has been a very important issues for the listed key issues. And for my standpoint, so predictability should be reduced. For example, sea ice predictions or ship performance prediction and so on. And so every person with different interest among the stakeholders should discuss and should try to reduce predictability, unpredictability. That's a very important thing, I think. It's a general comment. So.
Yeah. As you just, I think you have mentioned very important things. So maybe if we summarized all the presentation today, it is converged to 2 points. One is, as you mentioned, sustainability. And the other one is predictability anyway, you know. But sometimes, mostly we are dreaming or always we are assuming the best scenario anyway, you know, when we evaluate the sustainability or possibility of the NSR anyway. Yeah? You must be very careful about that point anyway. So if I say once again, predictability and also sustainability anyway. Okay. 우리 여기 여기 플로리다 한 분이 지금
I believe we have one question from the floor who's been waiting for a long time. So now we have Dr. Kim Hyun-chul participating in the discussion as well. So again, I mean, I was really impressed to hear that presentation. It was really impressive. I mean, personally, I thought so. I mean, from your perspective, Dr. Kim, I mean, that kind of great, technique will certainly contribute to ensuring safe navigation through the NSR and predict more accurately the sea ice conditions. That's also related to the maritime ecosystem as well, but it is also related to safe navigation through the NSR. So from that perspective, I'd like to ask Dr. Kim that based on your research activities, maybe you can share with us some good advice or recommendation, just briefly. Yes, so taking part in this really valuable seminar. So I also heard very interesting presentations. It was really valuable, but not just as an researcher, but again, economic feasibility, economic aspect is really important. So we need to put more importance into that as well. But obviously, that's closely related to safety, safe operation of vessels through the NSR. And again, there are many factors affecting the safe navigation and economic navigation through the NSR, including the geopolitical conditions we are facing now. So again, there are many experts from different fields, but most of them, and what we can all agree is that we all want to have a more reliable, more accurate data to be based on this. So, I mean, recently, just tapping into the advanced technologies, including the artificial intelligence, now we can better predict, I mean, most efficient, most economical, I mean, route for, I mean, to container operation through the NSR. So as we move forward, I hope that if we can secure more reliable, more accurate, I mean, data as a foundation to have a better predictability, that will certainly contribute to securing safe and maybe, I mean, regular, I mean, navigation through the NSR. So again, this does not belong to just one discipline. I mean, it's multidisciplinary, I mean, effort that is required. That's what I felt. Thank you.
연구소에서 굉장히 활발한 또
I believe in the, I mean, the Portland Institute. So obviously, you are doing a number of really valuable, I mean, research activities. But at the end of the day, to further develop the, I mean, the utilization of the NSR, what we need at the end of the day is again securing the safe navigation through the NSR. So, I mean, among the participants, we cannot actually. I think we'd like to take a couple of moments to take questions from the floor. Do we have a question? I mean, to whom your question is directed?
저 인천대학교 최수범 박.
I'm Choi Soo-bum from Incheon National University. Rather than a question, I'd like to give you my comment regarding Professor Hong's presentation. I have a different opinion or comment. I believe you have some negative views for the NSR. I feel sorry about that. For example, and about the cargo, the prediction of the cargo volume, you said it's going to be smaller than what Russia forecasts, but I have a different opinion. We have to look at the situation before and after the war in Ukraine, and there is a possibility that there will be more cargo volume. For example, from 2024, there will be some coal produced in the Tamil Peninsula and will be exported to India. And the trade volume of the export volume of LNG to Asia is expected to increase. In that sense, the cargo volume for the future should be forecast in an upward way. And about NTC, the Professor Jia analyzed the capex, and about NTC, and the hub terminal is going to be constructed on Kamchatka, and I think that's going to be a big threat to the port of Busan. And I believe we need more research on that as well. And the Russia is planning to build a container hub terminal on Kamchatka Peninsula. Mr. Lee said TSR will be competing with NSR, but I believe these two are complete different routes, so we should take a different approach to these routes. And I think the situation after the war in Ukraine is totally different. And some scholars say by 2050 there will be no ice on the North Pole. And I believe we have to get prepared for that situation. And I believe the time has come that the globe will have to use the NSR.
Professor Hong, please answer to the question. Yes, as a researcher specialized in the NSR. Yes, I also was one of the the members of the Rosatom Council. So yes, it's quite natural, and it's also the fact that many of us rely heavily on the data provided by Rosatom and the Russian government authorities. So yes, sometimes we have big question marks. Why is this? Cargo volume is so high. We ask the questions as well. So, is the cargo volume figures are really, reliable or objective? Well, there's a question mark. But, it's quite clear that the Russian government is really eager to further develop the, resources they have in the Arctic region. But the key factor here is to have enough and appropriate vessels and fleets. I mean, the ice class vessels. So at the moment, it's targeted in the Asia and Europe, but it's not enough at the moment. That's the key, I believe. Again, I mentioned in my presentation that there are a lot of dredging construction activity projects. So it's quite a lot. The dredging volume, 40,000. 40 million tons. So, but due to the sanctions imposed on Russia, many of them now withdraw. So, due to time constraint, I did not touch upon all the details. But the Western technologies and the cooperation with the shipyards, if these are not provided at a sufficient level, and also enough investments are not provided, obviously Russian governments cannot realize what their ambitions. So, again, the reason why I was relatively pessimistic before the previous year is that because of that situation. Did that answer your question? Yes. Well, I was quite surprised. Gave me kind of goosebumps. The Vladivostok and maybe building more international transshipment hub in the Russian ports throughout the NSR will be a really formidable competitor to the Port of Busan. So. Again, NTC, transshipment hubs, if that attracts a great interest from China, what will happen and what will affect, how it will affect to the, Port of Busan. So, maybe, I think it was Mr. Lee mentioned briefly, using the NSR, so far, maybe, Port of Busan is one of the, beneficiaries which reap the great benefit. But again, at the end of the day, it will be not easy for us to just realize our dreams or keep our dreams alive. Again, there are a lot of competition emerging, changing environment and conditions. So again, there's too much unpredictability at the moment. So we all agree to that, at least I believe. So again, anyhow, Busan Port should make continued effort to be the important transshipment hub in the region. Again, this is quite a sensitive issue for us, at least. Do we have any other questions? Or do we have enough time for that?
시작은 우리가 좀 늦게 했지만은 끝은
We started a little bit behind the schedule, but I believe we are about to finish the session on time. And I believe a lot of Koreans could had the sleepless nights because of the World Cup soccer game. I hope the global community live in a peaceful manner. That is my great wish. And this, well, I'm not going to make a comment here, right? So I'm just moderating the session of panel discussion. And one thing I'd like to tell you is that we are researching and making lots of efforts, but all business always will have to prepare for the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. We shouldn't be just to be unhappy about the worst case scenario, but too rosy about the future with the best case scenario. But we have to get prepared for any case. In that sense, I believe in this discussion session, lots of discussants and panelists raised questions and answered the questions. And due to time constraint, I think we have to stop it here. I really wish I had more time to answer more questions, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to all the participants to this panel discussion. And this brings us to the end of the panel discussion. Thank you very much.
very much, ladies and gentlemen, from Norway, Finland, or Shanghai, okay?
예, 진행을 맡아주신 해양
That was Professor Park Ko-chul moderating the session from KMOU, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to all the participants. And this brings us to the end of all the program of the 11th International Arctic Shipping Seminar. And I thank all the participants for sitting through all this time. And I hope you have a safe journey back home. And it was Professor Kim Gi-tae. Thank you.